Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of HR Live Lounge. Today's guest is Lana Meilinger, and Lana is the Global Director of Talent Acquisition and Employer Branding for a company called Spryker Systems. Now, Lana is what I would describe as a trailblazer in talent acquisition and leadership development. In this episode, Lana's going to share her unique insights on redefining what leadership is about and navigating the evolving landscape of talent attraction. Stay tuned to the end because Lana discusses two things that I think you should really listen out for. The first one is a winning strategy that she and her talent acquisition team, quite sizable team, they're using right now and getting some incredible results. The second thing that I really want you to listen out for is Lana's insights into working very closely with retained executive search firms. She shares some brilliant lessons on how you can be more effective and get better results from those same firms. So for now, here's a little taster of what you can expect later in the show.
I'm not one of those people that just stumbled into talent acquisition, but actually I knew fairly early onwards that I wanted to become, talent acquisition manager and one day kind of lead a team and have a wide impact. So unless a hiring manager can argue, these are the capabilities that this candidate is adding, we're not hiring because this person will not make us better, faster, stronger, more efficient, more data-driven, whatever, right? You can insert whatever is needed here. So I think it all comes from this value-based thought that I have when I think about sales, but also when I think about talent acquisition. What's the future trajectory someone brings to the table, right? So it's great if you hire someone right now that can fix your problem you have in this moment, or the challenge or the pain you have in this moment. But literally ask yourself the question, where will we be in 5 years and where will this person be? Do they still have the relevance to be in our organization? Do they have the right mindset? Do they rather think, I know it all, I have my playbook, I come in, I roll it out, done, been there, done that, will do it again? Or is it someone that acknowledges the future is open, right?
Welcome to HR Live Lounge, where you get to meet with some of the most inspirational human resources leaders and talent acquisition specialists on the planet. And now, here's your host, Roy Ripper.
Welcome everyone to HR Live Lounge, and we've got a great episode for you today. My guest in the Live Lounge is Lana Meilinger. So my first duty is welcome Lana.
Thank you so much, Roy. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
And we're really excited to have you on the show, Lana. So look, first question, let's just get this one done. Give us a brief outline of your career up to this point and the role that you are occupying and performing right now.
Yeah, I'd love to. Whenever I'm being asked that question, I usually answer by saying, it's kind of funny because I'm not one of those people that just stumbled into talent acquisition, but actually I knew fairly early onwards that I wanted to become, talent acquisition manager and one day kind of lead a team and have a wide impact. So I think that's a funny thing because whenever I interview talent acquisition managers, for example, they said, I don't know, used to work in sales, used to work in consulting or something. And then, or I love working with people, so why not interview people? But already in my master thesis, I kind of, always focused on recruiting. So for example, my master thesis was built around kind of like how recruiting works in the NGO world versus the non-NGO world, right? So that was very interesting for me. I had many, many interviews. I started my career in executive search in a consultancy called Kienbaum, where I learned a lot. Transitioned to Accenture, learned basically how to prepare and also how to hold assessment centers on a very kind of like strategic level. And then kind of jumped into a very, very big shift, jumped into a very vibrant startup scene in Berlin. So I started my first job as a global recruiter in a rocket internet venture called Foodpanda. Back then, Foodpanda, back in the days, then at some point merged with Delivery Hero, which I guess rings a bell maybe to most of us. And after that, I kind of discovered a bit more of a broader HR role. So I was an HR business partner in a smaller software company, but also Berlin-based, where I particularly found the product of the software company very, very interesting, because ultimately it was a recruiting interview software, which was very, very interesting also from the product perspective to learn a lot. And it was great because I had a lot of responsibilities outside of talent acquisition. But ultimately, given it was a bit of a smaller company, I was really missing and lacking this impact, kind of the impact you can make on people's lives when you hire a lot of people, but especially the impact you make to an organization when you bring brilliant talent on board. So long story short, there was not a lot of growth, right? I then found my dream job, and I guess that's where we are right now, which is working as the global director of talent acquisition and employer branding over here at Spryker. However, when I started at Spryker in 2018, my role was completely different. And and also the company was very different back then, because obviously we grew a lot, and, we kind of went from this young hipster Berlin startup to an established global player in the e-commerce industry. So a lot has changed. Me being the first talent acquisition manager and the second people and culture person on the ground in 2018. Now we have a people and culture team of 21 people, whereas I lead the talent acquisition and employer branding part, which consists of a lovely team that I want to give a shout out here of 10 people, and we're operating globally. So that may be in a nutshell where I'm coming from and where I'm at right now.
That's fantastic. Listen, question for you. Spryker, just for the people that don't know, what do they do, and how many employees are you responsible for right now?
Yeah, so Spryker Systems is the global leading e-commerce platform. And ultimately what we do in a nutshell is empowering businesses with kind of like the agility and flexibility that they actually need in order to thrive in the digital era and digital economy right now, right? Things are changing so drastically fast. So you basically need a platform, an e-commerce platform, to be flexible with you, right? To go in any direction that the market shifts, so you kind of like can follow and with a lot of agility. So ultimately we offer a modular and customizable architecture to our businesses, and therefore enable them to create innovative, personalized, and especially scalable solutions for a digital e-commerce experience.
And it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because the type of work that Spryker do, you really need to make sure as a business that you're walking the walk, talking the talk, etc. Because you're the example of companies that you're going to help with your solutions, right?
Yeah, correct. Definitely couldn't agree more.
Okay, fantastic. So Lana, look, let's get into these questions. The first one, and I ask all my guests this, is there a success quote that you live your life by, or your work life by, that's really dear to your heart? What do you do?
Yeah, there is one which I carry with me since I'm a student, and it goes: if opportunity doesn't knock, build a door. And it's from Milton Berle, which was, unfortunately he died, an American actor and comedian. And ultimately, what I love about this quote is that it reflects, this drive, this like spirit of owning what lies ahead of you, rather than, just waiting around for something to happen. So it really kind of gives this: create an opportunity instead of just waiting around for something to appear. I like the dynamic that it brings. So if opportunity doesn't knock, just build a door, and at some point it will knock. And you can even take it further, right? Like thinking ahead, like if you see something knocking, you can still own, do I want to open the door now, right? So it's still like, you have it all in your hands. Ultimately, that's what it means to me. And I think it translates also into the business context. Like, I'm someone, I don't wait around and see what happens. I think if you wait around nowadays, you don't get anywhere. So you will rarely see me sitting around just maintaining something. I usually challenge myself a lot, maybe even sometimes too much. I challenge my team a lot, so they bear with me. They somehow, I feel like, incorporated that as well. So we are a team of, where we really also in a safe space can disagree with each other or can challenge each other. Where are you coming from? I really want to understand, does this really make an impact what we're doing? Does this try to solve a problem what we're trying to do? Are we just kicking off another project for the sake of kicking off another project, right? So yeah, I think this probably describes it fairly well.
I love that. And I think it's the first time I've ever heard Milton Berle cited as that inspiration. And I love the quote. I think the quote's a brilliant one. And I agree with you. I think the first step is for us to be open to opportunity. I think a lot of people, it's easier just to keep doing what we do and it be really safe and don't go outside our lane. So just to be open and to try and go for opportunities that present themselves and deciding which ones of those that you want to pursue. Okay, look, I'm really keen to find out in that career, and as you said, you are unusual in that at a very early stage, you decided talent was going to be, people were going to be your way forward, and talent acquisition, talent management with that. What's the biggest lesson that you think you've learned in your career? And what was the eureka moment for you where it all kind of fell into play?
I was wondering, like, eureka moment, I feel like I leave that more to the scientists. I think they have, they can have all those eureka moments.
Sure.
But obviously, I faced so many challenges in my career so far. I do feel like if I face a challenge, it's more about, in our profession that we talk about, like, how do I come up now with a scenario, right? How do I contingency plan based on the challenge that is in front of me? So yeah. I do feel like, and I come to the let's call it aha moment in a second, but I do feel like we've been through a lot in the last years. And when I say we, I don't just mean talent acquisition or people and culture or HR or our industry. I mean, literally the world has been through a lot, right? There wasn't, still I heard it's coming back, the pandemic. There is a war going on. There's macroeconomic situations and challenges, right? There's a downturn. So I think it's more about understanding the status quo. Where do we stand? What challenge comes with it? Defining the problem, have a set of opportunities and risks that lie in the situation, and then kind of come up with a really customized solution, right? You don't have a one size fits all kind of solution to those sort of problems. So that just really, encouraged me to think outside of the box, because all those challenges, of course, they affected me. They affected the business, right? They affected Spryker. So you need to come up with a solution. But one of the aha moments I had in the past was when I think back to 2021, which was a crazy period. We stood in front of a hiring challenge, and honestly, it was a hiring challenge I've never faced before. So ultimately, it was hypergrowth, right? Yeah. Our goal was to double down our existing head count within a year. So ultimately, we wanted to be 1,000 employees by the end of 2021. Things then turned out a little bit differently, but that I just discovered in the end of 2021. So I was literally with a team of, I think back then, 4 people, getting ready to hire 500 people in a year. Oh. And not just hiring for the sake of hiring, because this was always kind of like what I said. I'm not just here to hire anyone, right? And to fill a position, which I think a recruiter, sometimes if you don't have this drive and this will to challenge yourself, you can naturally fall into this bias, right? That you just want to say, I want to have this done, like, let's just hire this person, but you don't really like challenge yourself. But ultimately, this was the situation I was in front of. So my very first thought back in 2021 was, oh my God, we need so much headhunter support, right? Which is, I think, the first thing any TA or any TA lead thinks about, like, which agency can help us here? Which agency can we onboard here? As part of the hypergrowth, we also, and that's what I take care of, we also had a lot of executive and leadership positions. Right. So I had to own them as well. And here I had the brilliant idea, also through some introductions and obviously also kind of like where I'm coming from in executive search, to partner with 3 top executive search companies. We went all in, we went for the big names. We said, okay, those names, they will bring the holy result, right? Sure. We invested a lot of money in retainers, and the aha moment that I'm coming to now was literally nothing happened.
Whoa.
There was very little result.
So you guys retained these, what's often referred to as the Shrek exec search firms, the top 5, the top 10, whatever.
Yeah.
And nothing happened?
So there was, I mean, that's maybe exaggerated. Little happened. Let's say little happened. But there were unsuccessful searches that closed because they went on too long. And those executive search firms said, look, we've been working with you over months. Their frustration went down, their motivation went down. So their frustration went up, motivation went down. And it was really hard to manage that. And it was also really hard to justify that, right, in front of the business. Like, ultimately, we really spend a lot of money. I assume everyone kind of probably has an idea of how much money a retainer for, let's say, a US-based executive search firm is. But I think what lies behind that is more that, you know, the misalignment of Spryker being a very vibrant, very extremely high bar when it comes to talent. I myself and my team have very, very high expectations when it comes to excellence throughout the whole process, throughout the whole strategy. And they just didn't fit those expectations. And that was such an aha moment for me. It was more learning, right? Where I was like, this is very interesting. Like, I would have expected literally the holy results from them. There was very little flexibility towards us as a partner when it comes to the terms of business we negotiated. There was literally no flexibility, right, in order to accommodate maybe our needs a little bit better. And I've experienced that with more boutique executive search firms, right? Whereas with those big names, there's literally no wiggle room, right? You're one of hundreds of clients. And that's also the feeling I got. And that somehow doesn't fit together with what you invest and what you think that this big brand can ultimately bring to the table. So some lessons learned. I completely pivoted around the strategy of how to execute on, or how to commit and then execute on the business hiring targets. If you want, we can get into it, but that was definitely my eureka moment.
Listen, it's fascinating for me because you and I both started in executive search. So our perspective on these firms that we use is quite unique. We know how they tick, we know how they work. And then, as you said, as a client partner, it must have been so frustrating for you to, yes, get the aha moment, but understand, hang on a second, I know what they do. I know what they should be doing for us, and I know the results they should be getting for us, and we're not getting them. So I am interested to get into it in terms of like that challenge that you faced. How did you address it internally? Specifically, what did you do? What was the change? And then what results did you get from that?
Yeah. There are a couple of actions I think that we decided to take. So first of all, we stopped working with some of those executive search firms and we went for more boutique search firms on the ground based on the location that we're looking at, right? So there was one in the US, for example, based in Silicon Valley. Of course, also a lot of invest needed, but they've been heavily focused on, for example, marketing, and they've been and they are doing a brilliant job. So it takes some time to find your partners, right, to work on those really challenging searches in a very, very challenging market. But ultimately, you know, one of my learnings and what I did is, especially if you have a very high bar and very high expectations, try to do as much as possible in-house. Like, try to control the quality, try to own the span of control. We decided, for example, to also work with an embedded recruiting service, which I vetted a lot, right? So we had many due diligence calls beforehand, because ultimately I needed to prevent my team from literally burning out, right? Working day and night in order to fill those roles. So I had two challenges. I had the business challenges of hitting the hiring targets, but I also had the challenge of trying to build my team. And at the same time, I wanted to build my team from TA only to specialized functions, right? I wanted to build a coordination function. I wanted to build a sourcing function. I wanted to build employer branding on top. And with the feeling of always running behind, the only solution I saw to relieve me a little bit from the pressure of hiring for my team, because that's something you really want to be careful with, I brought in an embedded recruiting service, so they relieved me of this pressure. So I could focus on hiring for my team. I could manage and lead the team, including the embedded recruiting service, which literally for a year belonged to our team, right? So they were part of our team with everything. And that was awesome. Like, this was the best experience. The moment we didn't need them anymore, so the moment the volume went down a little bit, the partnership was able to be canceled within 2 weeks, right? Which is like
Wow.
really great to have this solution that you can use. And then when you don't need it anymore, you're not stuck in this corset of now,
Yeah.
there's 1 or 2 or 3 months of notice period.
Yeah.
That was really great. We partnered really well with them and ultimately also hit our target.
I think the key there as well is by bringing in that embedded recruitment service, they just get the culture, don't they, in a way that perhaps
Exactly.
those exec search firms didn't really understand. You were just, as you said, one client in a sea of clients, and their investment is just taking the brief from you, working the brief, and hopefully coming up with something. That embedded service, probably from a smaller, more boutique type specialists, they're making an investment by being there. They understand the culture more. And of course, hopefully that resulted in better quality hires and higher number of hires.
Yeah, totally. And all of this feeds into our employer brand, right? You can somehow train them and enable them. How do we at Spryker hold interviews?
Yeah.
What are we saying? What are we not saying? What are we not doing with our candidates or for our candidates? So you could literally see, like, even still today, I hear people saying, I had this like wonderful experience with XYZ, and there was a talent partner coming from the embedded recruiting solution, right? Or for example, in this year, we had a strategy week within the people and culture team, and we brought one talent partner of this squad that they embedded into the strategy week, because she was brilliant, she had awesome ideas. So we were able also to implement some of the things with her outside of recruiting, like more when you look into hiring manager training or running enablement internally. So that was really interesting, and I love that. So that was definitely a lesson learned for me. Like, always outsourcing and working with headhunters is not the go-to solution, although it seems to be first in mind to many, many people and many TA specialists out there when being kind of, given a volume hiring or a specifically difficult position to work on.
Yeah. And I think it's that thing, isn't it, that when that's the way that we've always done it, it tends to be the go-to that exactly. we ultimately go to.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting one. And also, I think coming from that other world, coming from the exec search world, the retain world myself, there's always been this friction between the two departments. Recruitment or specialist search companies are seen almost as the necessary evil. We have to pay these big fees too, their retain fees. We don't really like these people very much because they're pushy or arrogant or whatever. And I know that's a generalization. Totally. I'd like to think there are some good ones amongst us.
Yes.
But there has been that friction. So for you to, what's the word? It's not enemies, but to bring your enemies closer to you, or the perceived enemy, to bring them closer into you and work directly with them. Both parties, it's a win. It's actually 3 wins. It's like our customers, our external customers, people coming to work for us, experience good stuff. We win as a business because we can see results from it and it's more effective. And even the embedded agency, the embedded recruiter, they get closer to you. So ultimately they're more successful and, we get a happy client from it. So win-win-win, right?
I agree. And interestingly enough, the embedded parties, they even became kind of brand ambassadors of Spryker, which is something we never told them to do, right? But they were so invested in our culture and they were really feeling the Spryker vibe that there was not a lot left for me to do in order to brief them, right? It was all about bringing them into the team and making them feel like obviously they are a full member of the team, right?
Yeah.
It was a massive win. I'm not saying that working with executive search firms doesn't have its justification. Like right now, I have 2 awesome executive search firms that I like to partner with. But also after you build this kind of like, this is my expectation, this is how we run our processes, I expect XYZ to happen. But I think it's all a matter of how to, of course, also collaborate and how to, you mentioned brief, right? Brief is the most important thing, like
foundation.
Garbage in, garbage out, right? Like you really, like, that's the thing. You need to invest so much time in the kickoff of those projects. Yeah.
It's just having another tool in your toolkit, right? It just,
Yeah.
as you said, you're never going to give up using retained external recruitment agencies and search firms. But just knowing, actually, we've tried this before, it's been successful. Maybe we've got that in our arsenal to be able to draw on again, as well as these good relationships with external search firms. Listen, I'm really keen to find out from you, with a team of, was it 10 that you've got now, or 11 people?
Yeah, 10.
Development of those people, upskilling those people, getting them ready for the current and future world of talent acquisition. I know that's something really dear to you. How do you develop this team? What are you looking to do with them over the coming months and years?
That's a really good one. And you're right. I think if you're a successful leader, you really know how to enable your team, and you never stop committing yourself and the team to continuous learning. I think in general, continuous learning and developing at Spryker has a very, very high existence, right? Like we really encourage that throughout the whole organization. So I'm not special in this regard here at Spryker, but I do tend to run a lot of internal workshops, a lot of sessions. I tend to bring in more external trainers than maybe other departments do. And I really think this is needed because of the nature of how talent acquisition changes and changed throughout the past years. I see it in my career. What was needed 10 years ago was maybe 1/10 of what I'm giving now in TA. I feel like it became so much broader, so much wider, so much more ingrained into the business as well as a function. And the relevance for the business is, I think, crystal clear. So what I tend to do with my team is we do have a lot of breakout sessions where I try to block a certain amount of time from my team. Let's say maybe on a monthly basis, we have this innovation lab, as we call it. So we come together and we really look what's out there, what has changed, what can we do better, where can we maybe become more efficient. So we're having this breakout sessions, but also I bring in, as I said, external trainers. So recently, for example, we've done a negotiation training with an external trainer that usually trains salespeople.
Right.
And it took a while for me to build this training course with the trainer, but I do see the relevance, right? To negotiate kind of as you do in sales within talent acquisition. It's all about building the storyline. It's all about having the tools and mechanisms of negotiation at hand in order to feel the most confident and comfortable when negotiating with candidates. And they do negotiate a lot nowadays. Like I feel like they also kind of stepped up their game, right? So we really need to follow along here.
Do you know what? I'm so impressed because you're one of the few people that I speak to that actually sees that association. I've always believed that anybody in the talent space works in sales. And I've struggled to get that across because if you ask the average talent acquisition person, sales is their anti. I don't want to do that. I chose talent because I didn't want to work for the sales and marketing department or function. And I think we're always selling. We're selling opportunities to prospective candidates. We're selling those candidates internally to our hiring managers. And also we're selling human resources and talent acquisition as a function up to our boards, to our CEOs. We have to make sure that we have a presence at that board table. And I think the way to do it is, as you say, through negotiation, through selling. We have to be as skilled as perhaps the sales function is traditionally perceived. So it's amazing to meet somebody that actually is doing something that I've been thinking and trying to teach over a long period of time.
No, and I can understand where you're coming from. I can also understand why people maybe have a tendency to disagree with that. But I see it more from a way of how sales is also perceived and literally how bad sales can be done. Let's be honest, right? But I would take it even further. For me, if you're doing sales right, and at Spryker, especially because Spryker as a product is literally very close to the business, right? It's not an add-on that you buy for, let's say, 1 or 2 years. And if you don't have like a budget anymore, you just kick it off. So that's why our sales needs to be value-based, right? Or based on value-based selling. So, and I see this very much in talent acquisition as well. Ultimately, it's not just about selling a candidate to the hiring manager or internally in order to get the position closed, but it's really the whole process around what's the pain points that the organization is having, what's the challenge that the leader is facing, that the hiring manager is facing. And that's why my team, for example, is also extremely close. They are talent partners, right? More than anything. They have also like their cadences with the leaders. So they know exactly what is happening inside the team that they are hiring for. They know exactly which characters are part of that team in order to create this value by finding the add-on. And the hire at Spryker is not just, we need 5 more salespeople, as an example. So it's not just an added capacity, but every person we bring into the team needs to add a certain capability. And we have that defined, right? So unless a hiring manager can argue, these are the capabilities that this candidate is adding, we're not hiring, because this person will not make us better, faster, stronger, more efficient, more data-driven, whatever, right? You can insert whatever is needed here. So I think it all comes from this value-based thought that I have when I think about sales, but also when I think about talent acquisition.
Fantastic. Yeah, because you're right. I mean, not all sales are good sales. And I think it is that negative perception around sales, square peg into a round hole and all of that thing. Good sales at its heart is understanding the problem and then finding a solution if it's available. It's not about just taking what we sell, the 1, 2, 3 products or services, and putting that into every single problem. It's bespoke solutions. I could talk to you about this all day, Lana, because this is a subject really close to my heart. But one of the questions I wanted to ask you is maybe following on from there is, how do you see talent acquisition developing over the next 5 years? And, what can TA teams, leaders do to make sure that our workforce is fully equipped to meet that challenge?
Yeah, that's a really good one. And probably here I could talk for hours. So I really need to focus because I get very passionate about that. So interrupt me if I fall into a monologue, but there are so many things that I think will happen. And I mean, ultimately, you never know what will happen in the future. I think skill-based hiring will be kind of the big thing, right? Away from which qualifications does a person bring, which certificate do they bring, where have they studied, blah, 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 blah. But, and we are doing this already at Spryker, but really understanding what's the, as we call it internally, what's the future trajectory someone brings to the table, right? So it's great if you hire someone right now that can fix your problem you have in this moment, or the challenge or the pain you have in this moment. But literally ask yourself the question, where will we be in 5 years and where will this person be? Do they still have the relevance to be in our organization? Do they have the right mindset? Do they rather think, I know it all, I have my playbook, I come in, I roll it out, done, been there, done that, will do it again? Or is it someone that acknowledges the future is open, right? So many things can happen. We've seen it in the last years. And I'm willing to get going. I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to really look into innovation, look into technology, look into AI, and see how I can incorporate that in the future of the business. So ultimately, can someone solve our future challenges as well that we can't even define yet, which is a very, very difficult one, I think, in a hiring process to assess. But at least I think you need to start trying to do your best with those kind of maybe a little bit uncomfortable questions. Another thing I'm seeing is the hybrid work model versus face-to-face. And honestly, 2018, we at Spryker, I never hired anyone that I haven't met face-to-face, shook their hand, looked in the eyes, seen how they are with me in a room. And literally now we're hiring probably one person per day via Zoom, right? And all of this kind of like development also changes, in my opinion, especially when we look into leadership hiring. And that's one thing we redefined also at Spryker internally, the skills a leader needs to bring to the table. So therefore also talent acquisition, I think in the future needs to be very much aware of how leadership traits, essential leadership traits, change in the future and have changed already up until now, right? So topics around inclusive leadership, DEI as part of leadership, or ethical leadership, or empathy in leadership, or integrity, right? Which I think are all things that resurface right now because they are just so important in leadership. They become very important, and they also become important as you lead globally distributed teams, right? You can't come with a leadership style of like 30 years ago and now try to lead a global extremely diverse team in a company, let's just take Spryker as an example, in a company like Spryker right now, that just doesn't match, and this will never be a success. So I think this is another thing I'm seeing, and where I'm seeing also talent acquisition managers to really needing to step up their game.
Right.
In stepping up their game in order to redefine leadership skills, to
Right.
redefine assessment criteria. We do have very concrete concepts, for example, that we have introduced. We have a leadership skill set that we bring whenever we hire a leader, right? So you need to have those clear criteria defined, which can change over time. And that, I think, is the tricky part. Once you've launched something, it feels very hard to take this and break it apart again, right?
Sure.
But that's what I mean when I say step up their game. It's not like you launch something and you take the leadership skills that you launched 5 years ago and they are still applicable for now or for the future. Or, for example, we have implemented, as we call it, AAA criteria or AAA Spryker criteria. So AAA, I guess, describes everything that falls under a high performer AAA talent, right?
Sure.
At Spryker. And there was this discussion around, we need to hire AAA, only AAA. And at some point I said, let's pause for a second. What does that really mean? Because literally 3 years ago, we didn't have that. We didn't know what we meant when we said a high performer. And I think those are like projects that a talent acquisition lead or a manager really should want to tackle, right? Because those are, I mean, it's a lot of work that needs to be invested to figure those things out and to roll. It's one thing to figure them out and, to create surveys and to build those things bottom up because you want the buy-in from your organization. But it's another thing to roll this out. Just because you think you need a AAA concept or however you want to call it, doesn't mean that the hiring managers all see that this way or the organization sees it well. So then it's about like, how do I bring this to the company? How do I make them see the value of this? How do they use this on a daily basis? Which training do I need to run in order to ingrain this into their minds? So we all have a fair and aligned concept on how to measure performance and how to measure talent. So that maybe as a few examples of what I mean when I say step up there.
Fantastic. And some real knowledge bombs in there as well. I can imagine there'll be people watching this and listening to this that, are really inspired. It's like we can get set in our trenches. We can just keep doing things the way we've always done them. That old adage, why fix it when it's not broke? All of those things. It's constantly challenging. And I love that. Thank you for sharing those. We're moving towards the end of our time, and sadly, Lana, because I know I could talk to you on this subject for,
me too,
as you said, for hours, and maybe we explore those. Maybe we explore those on another episode, perhaps. But I want you to think about somebody in our industry, or that you've met within business, or you've read recently, or seen as a speaker. Somebody that's doing good work in our industry and you want to give a shout out to.
Yeah, that's a really nice opportunity. And I gave already a little shout out to my team. If I could, I would probably pick my team because they are just on a daily basis. They are doing awesome things.
I like that.
Really awesome things. Besides that, I always think it's great to give shout outs also to the industry. There are so many people out there that inspire me on a daily basis, which I really want to thank, maybe without mentioning names. But two names I want to mention, and they are an agency. I talked about them before. They basically run the agency of the embedded recruiting services. They are London-based. They are an agency called Move, and they have two founders, Adriano and Chris, which, if you don't know them, follow them because they do create and share awesome content. They are not just founders of the Move agency, but they are also really knowledge providers. And it's awesome to see what they are doing in the industry. It's awesome to see how they partner with their clients, how they really see to solve problems that talent acquisition managers or leaders face. So for me, they were the best thing to happen in 2021. Besides that, they are just cool. They are just cool guys. The two of them, I met them also. So yeah, if you don't follow them, stop by, say hi. And if you're interested in maybe collaborating with them or using some of the very customizable solutions that they offer, just get in touch with them or get in touch with me. And I'm super happy to make an intro.
That's fantastic. And I love the fact you've given a shout out to recruiters. It's like, that's not so common. And I think it's really good when we know good practice and actually we champion that. Because so often, what we tend to share is the worst. It's like, okay, I've had this bad experience and what have you. So look, on behalf of all recruiters, I'm just really pleased that you've called out two of them. We're going to put some links in the bottom of the show notes. So if you're listening or watching this, below this video, below this sort of podcast episode, you'll see some links to, I think it was Adriana and Chris. Exactly. At Move. So maybe we'll reach out to those guys and get them on as future guests.
Oh, they would love that.
I bet.
And do have them. They are awesome.
Fantastic. Lana, look, sadly we have come to the end of our time together. How can people that watch and listen to this episode reach out to you, connect with you? What's the best way for them?
I guess LinkedIn is the best way. I think you can reach me literally almost every time of the day and night on LinkedIn. Come by, drop a message, connect with me. I always love connecting to people. People inspire me. So if you want to connect, if you want to chat with me about something, I think LinkedIn is the best way, and then we take it from there.
Fantastic. And I know that you're on Instagram as well. So again, we'll put those kind of links below. And look, for people that are watching and listening, I will say to you, please check out Lana's work. She's active on social media. She's written articles that, quite frankly, I found fascinating. And it's why we invited you on as a guest, Lana. But if anyone's interested in learning more about what it is that you do, your opinions, etc., please, sort of look out for the work that Lana posts out there. Sadly, we are at the end, Lana. I just wanted to thank you so much for sharing what I know to be a really innovative kind of approach to talent management. And I don't think that's an accident. I think that's down to you as a person and as a leader, and challenging as well, not only your internal hiring managers, but definitely challenging your internal team and how they interact with candidates and hiring managers. Really appreciate your time today, Lana. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Roy, for having me. It was an absolute pleasure. I think you can tell that when I speak about those things, I'm just like burning with passion and with drive to do something, to leave a dent in the industry. And I think that's what it's all about, right? You need to stand out and keep on going, keep on innovating and pushing the boundaries. And I love doing that. And I love talking about this. So it was a pleasure to speak with you.
Really, we can see that. Thank you, Lana.
Thanks.
A Live Lounge podcast with your host, Roy Ripper. Be sure to visit royripper.com to join the conversation, access the show notes, and discover our fantastic bonus content.